folks. I want to welcome you all to our fourth ZOOMTrak meeting. We are getting ready to start this thing, and we have a pretty good crew right now. We're at 61 participants, and it's growing very quickly. I am Steve Gillett. I'm the moderator for this session. Bruce Alcock is our webmaster host of this thing. We have 4 presentations today. Bruce is going to talk about quick signs. KATO is going to give a little presentation on what they've got going on. Chuck Peterson is going to talk about trees, and John Doehring is going to talk about his experiences with NRail modules. But before we start all that, we have a few things that are going on in NRail with some of the products we have, and Neal Carnaby is going to bring you up to speed on those. Yep. Neal is the manager of our NRail store.
Just a couple of quick things. The latest update on the diesels, the FTs. There's 78 sold as of today, and it still is breaking out at exactly 39 and 39.
Wow.
I find amazing. That means that by the time these arrive in April or May, I would expect them to be totally sold out. There's only 11 of each number available, and since most people are buying pairs, that means we could see anywhere between 11 and 15 more sales, and they're all gone. We have had the special up on the store, if you haven't noticed, for the steam annuals, 2007 through 2012, 2015, 16, and 17. We have had a comprehensive price, an all-in price for this month in December. That's $100 including shipping for all those, and also if you order between now and Christmas, I will throw in the steam guide as well, the other book that's further down on the page. We have lots of them. I'd like to have everyone have them. I looked at them a little bit while I was taking photographs, because I put some more photographs up on our website of those, and there's an awful lot of information in all those books, and it's very handy to have them as a reference guide in print. Lastly, the Gateway 2020 containers arrived. Our thanks to Jacksonville Terminal for making that possible. There's a 53-foot decorated for Gateway St. Louis 2020, and then there's a 20-footer decorated for NRail and a 20-footer decorated for T-TRAK to comprise that set. They are on sale at $39.95 for the set of 3, including shipping. And as of 10 minutes ago, there are now 7 of them left, because we sold one right before we came in here. So you have another one to ship, Bruce. And that's it for me.
Thank you, Neal.
Unless anyone has questions.
Any questions for anybody? All right, well, let's get into today's meeting. The first topic is quick signs, and Bruce Alcock, who is the past president of NRail and is currently the webmaster and treasurer. Is that right? Treasurer now these days? Bruce?
Secretary.
Secretary. One of these days I'll get it right. And he is going to talk about quick signs. So take it away, Bruce.
This one. Okay. There we go. Can everybody see that?
Yes. Okay,
good. So quick signs. This is going to be a quick seminar. And there we go. Okay. Signs give identity to an object. They're a bridge between reality and our model railroad world. We see things in reality and when we're driving around, and we sometimes want to recreate them. Or we might want to recognize somebody. We have somebody in the club who's done something. We want to make a sign and Chuck's Cheeseburgers or something. Identify a time frame. You might use the signs by identifying as an aid to help identify what area you're modeling, or identify a location. For example, if you're modeling upstate New York, you wouldn't have something like a California Hardware Company, and And you also want to create some atmosphere with the signs. It takes away some of the sterility. You start putting in more personality. So let's see. When you're doing signs, I'm just going to go ahead in here. Some of the tools that you can use are word processors. And there's Microsoft Word, OpenOffice, Adobe Acrobat. Notepad will not work. WordPerfect will. But most people today have some form of Microsoft Word or Microsoft Works, which can be used. You need to be cognizant of what fonts you use, and there are two comments about that. First of all, there's a website called railfonts.com where they have specific fonts for railroads for sale. I have no commercial interest in them, but that should be your source for fonts. I bought some a long time ago, and I just keep installing them on every new machine that I have, so that I can print out the signs I created way back when. Another comment is print fonts are not the same as sign fonts. Signage is very different from print, so what we're doing is an approximation. And size, don't believe the drop down. If, for example, under a font, you can, they tell you the smallest is 8 point, you can type in a 2 or a 3 and get a lot smaller. The sign that you see there, the Sooner Snooze Motel, was actually the, I think it was the Sunset Motel. It's a sign that Blair Line uses for their motel kit. And we just went ahead and put some red over a block of red over their name, and then put in Sooner Snooze, and that's how that sign came about. Okay. All right, so some of the techniques are to do copy and paste. Sometimes you'll find a sign that you want to use. You can scan it in and then use that as the basis. You can basically go ahead and resize the image, add a text box. With the text box, use border and fill, and then come up with mixed text and graphics. And one of the things you want to do is zoom up to 200% or greater, because you're doing N scale signs. What you see on the screen fit the screen is N scale, so you really need to zoom up so that you can do a lot better with the graphics. If you, on this sign that's up here, you'll notice the Texaco is kind of blurry. That's because right next to it on the right is an N scale sign, but when you expand it, for example, to put together a slide, it'll start to get blurry. When you're creating the signs, you want to do some research. Check it out. Signs from the 60s are different than modern signs. Signs from the 70s, 80s, each one has its own particular style. So if you're doing a sign and you want to carry through your era theme, you need to do some research. And company names change. I mean, for example, if you look at the bottom, you have City Service. Well, City Service changed its name to Citgo. So, and then you have Texaco, Super Chief, and Texaco today looks very different. So you need to do research on the net, but there's so much on the net. I mean, it's there. It's just waiting for you, and you can do copy and paste, pull it in. You can duplicate within the word processor, so that you can. One technique, for example, is if you're trying something, duplicate and then make a change, and that way, if you don't like what you did, you just go back to the original, duplicate, and try it again. Improvise, use your imagination. So we will go on to creating the signs. Okay, so types of signs. There are all kinds of signs that you can come up with. For example, there's station signs where for a yard, for the name of the yard, put it on a yard office, on a passenger station platform. You also have building signs and signs for various industries. In this case, Hanson Co-op, we had a member of our club, Steve Hanson, so we went ahead to kind of, you know, recognize him and created Hanson Co-op, which is a building on one of the modules. This Frisco sign happens to be a billboard, and it is a real Frisco billboard sign that we basically researched, pasted into the word processor and printed out. But then we went ahead and made up our club has gone ahead and made up billboard signs that basically promote our club.
The same process.
As soon as I'm done, if you have any comments, that would be great. Traffic signs. This, for example, is you know, look out for cattle. You have customer parking signs. They may be a little difficult to read, but N scale, you're not going to be able to read them. Well, okay. So here are some sign samples that we have. In this case, there were some samples that were taken off of the internet. In this case, we just keep duplicating the no parking sign so that we can have enough to, so if you miscut one, you don't worry about it. Parktown is a station. Norman is a station that we use on one of our T-TRAK modules. You have a building sign. They're just basically boxes, text boxes with fill. And here you have 3 different versions of the Cushing Cafe. This may look a little strange. When this prints out, this paragraph sign at the end will disappear because that's a feature in Word. You can turn that off also, but it's just something to be cognizant of. And then finally, printing signs. You can use your regular printer paper or heavyweight paper. You can do cardboard, kind of a lightweight cardboard. I think it's 40-pound paper that you use. For example, if you're not gluing it on, but you want it standalone, like highway signs and the like. Cut out with hobby knife and ruler, and then stand the back of the sign as a technique that we could do a short mini clinic on just that to put signs on buildings. You basically sand them down to they're very thin, and then put glue on and laminate them onto the side of the building. So that's pretty much it. I'm going to stop sharing here, and if there are any questions, you're welcome to enter them in chat.
Okay, thank you, Bruce. And as he said, if you look down at the bottom of your screen, there's a chat button that you can push, and then you'll get a little bar on the right column, right side of all the pictures of people where you can chat messages. And at the end of the ZOOMTrak meeting, we will go through some of these questions and try to give them an answer. Next up is KATO, who is going to talk about what they have new. Bruce, are they on? And who do we have there?
Yeah, Junpai is here.
Hello. Hi.
Hi.
There you go.
Thank you very much for this opportunity today. And can I share the? Okay. Can you see that?
Yeah, now we can see
Okay,
it.
great.
Over there.
Great. Okay. Thank you for this opportunity today. And I'm going to introduce that the new items are released this month and also January 2021. And first, the new items in December releasing is this is actually we shipped this week, and the N-scale locomotive STP-40F Amtrak Phase 1 scheme, which is we have 2 road numbers, which is new numbers, and very famous paint scheme in ZOOMTrak Phase 1, which is representing the 70s, the original paint scheme of ZOOMTrak. And we have released this in 2016, and this was very popular, and we decided to this new road numbers. And with current available items, these locomotives can best matching to the our Fleet 1 Phase 1 Fokker bookcase set, which is this photograph. Like this is a bookcase set with Fokker set, and in this set there is a empty slot to put the locomotive in. So this is showing that how the locomotive is stored into this train set. So so this with this set, you can store this new STP40P locomotive into the to get it put together into the bookcase set. And then also another new item this month is SDP40F BNSF Maersk 6976 rerun. This is rerun, but because at the time of the first release, this was very popular, and we ran out very quickly. So we decided to reproduce again. And technically, this is called that SDF40F, in prototype, which is converted to the ATSF and further BNSF. And this is a special paint scheme to celebrate that opening event, the Pier 400 container terminal in Los Angeles in 2002. And so again, this is a rerun project, but the very popular locomotive. And then we just finished that shipping for the analog units, and the DCC, and for both ZOOMTrak and Maersk, DCC and rock sound unit will be available in January. Okay, and finally the January new item is ST70 Ace Union Pacific 1111, powered by our people unit. And this is like the last heritage paint scheme from UP, and now it's running over the nationwide. So and now it's coupled with, in prototype, it's coupled with some sort of excursion train, but as well as the excursion train, this locomotive is like mixed together with regular freight train, and we can see, nationwide. And as well as our modern, together with modern freight car set, this is perfectly matching to our N-scale UP excursion train set. And currently it's running out, but we decided to rerun the excursion train set in March, so it can be, coupled with that excursion train. And this will be, analog item will be available in January 2021, and also the sound and DCC and sound units will be available in February. We are targeting February. And if you go to our website, katoyuse.com, N-scale SD70 Ace page, you can see that additional photo, very clear photos. And also, I brought a sample of the this new unit, so you can see. It's very, the painting was a little bit very, complicated for our factory, but we tried our best. So it looks good.
Gumpei, after you stop sharing, hold the locomotive up again so we can see it bigger, please.
Okay. Yeah. Let's do that. Okay. And the final. Okay. So I think that okay. Just one additional thing. I can't share that the screen of the PDF file, but now we are taking that reorder of the 20th century platform, which sold out very quickly, but because of the very popularity, we decided to rerun again. So we are taking now pre-order until December 22nd, which is a little bit short, but please accept that pre-order period. But we are accepting that pre-order for this 20th century platform kit. So if you are interested, then you can access to our online website or contact the local dealers. Okay, so that's it from me. And then how are we gonna do the?
Yeah, if you go to speaker view, you don't have to go to speaker view, but if other people want a bigger picture, that's a really nice looking engine. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Okay. On the Century, somebody was asking about the illuminated version of the Century with lights.
Oh, yeah, that's going to be available. We are just producing right now at the office, so yeah, it's going to be available. Starting delivery like right away.
Okay.
Next week.
So I guess that's why there are no light kits available right now. You're using them all for the.
Oh, that's true. Yeah. But we got the plenty of that individual lighting kits, so it's gonna be available. So yeah, it's just also shipped this week. So
yeah, it's back ordered right now. I understand. So
yeah.
But it's a nice looking set. I've got mine on the layout. And
thank you so much. It runs well.
It runs very well. Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you. Yeah, this is my.
I have a couple of problems on the tighter turns. I think I may have to work on the actual wheel sets to make sure they're exactly engaged.
Oh, okay.
It doesn't run as smoothly as my Santa Fe Super Chief, but it will.
Oh.
But it will.
Okay. Okay.
All right. Well, thank you very much for that.
Thank you very much for this opportunity. I appreciate that.
All right. The next is another short topic. A couple of months ago, Chuck Peterson gave us a nice presentation on rock formations, and he's back again this month to talk about trees. Chuck, if you're ready to go, take it away.
Okay, can everybody hear me now?
We can hear you.
Yeah, we can.
Okay, well, I want to wish everybody a happy holiday season and hope that everybody's been able to stay healthy and away from the bug that's been running around. Bruce asked me if I would pursue this topic a little bit, and it's something I've been working on. If you saw my rock formations, you probably understand that I'm trying to make things look as realistic as I possibly can within the limitations that we've got. And the topic today is going to be on how I make trees. Can everybody see my opening screen there?
Yep, we can see it.
Okay. Again, I've been trying to come up with a way to make the most realistic trees I can, and when you talk about doing things like the tree trunks and whatnot, I never could really come up with a way to paint the tree trunks so that they looked real. The question is, what the heck color are they? Are they a brown, or are they a gray, or something in between? So what I was able to do was actually come up with using real materials rather than trying to paint what looks like trunks to make a more realistic looking tree. So essentially that's what we're talking about, is how do I make what I think is a more realistic looking tree. I'm going to talk a little bit about the materials that I use to make the tree, and then the steps I go through to do that. Now, here's a picture of my layout of one of the trees that I've got. Actually, two trees there. I've got what would represent a pretty large cottonwood and then a smaller Russian olive tree. Those are typical trees that you might find up in Wyoming. And you can see the base of the tree looks pretty realistic. Well, this method has the natural looking trunks and the branches. There's very random variations between all of your trees, so no two trees are the same. In N scale, the vegetation that I use appears a bit more natural. This is also really good for the HO scale for any of you that might happen to be into the HO side. And I've been able to model trees anywhere from a 15-foot to a 75-foot tree in height, which runs between 1 to 6 inches of actual size. Well, the materials that I need, and this is where it's going to be kind of challenging for some of you. I have found that Western sagebrush is a very, very good base to make my trees. I also use some side cutters to do any trimming or pruning of the branches that I have. And then Woodland Scenics puts out what I think are some really, really good products. I tend to use the lighter side of their ground foam, like the coarse turf and the underbrush. Then a spray adhesive is needed. And then finally, I've also utilized Scenic Express Super Leaf. Now, here's what the different materials look like, the different sizes that you see. I've got them next to a paper clip and a pencil to give you a relative idea of size. The underbrush is finely ground foam. It's more finely ground than the bushes that you might be able to get from them. And that it works really well in building up the base of your leaf structures. I also mix in some of the Woodland Scenics coarse turf, which is a much finer, and it gives kind of a variety of texture in the tree branches. And then I might utilize the Scenic Express Super Leaf. This comes in a whole myriad of colors that you can use. You can go out onto their website and see what they got. But with the wide variety of colors in the Woodland Scenics products and the Scenic Express, I think you can model a wide variety of different kinds of trees. And I think, as you saw, I've even had one that looked like a Russian olive, which is a kind of a sage color looking leaf. Speaking of a sage color looking leaf, here is the Western sage that I've been utilizing. Now, it's largely found out in the Rocky Mountain area, the high arid desert plains. And I don't use any of the live plants when I go out there. I'll go around and I'll find some of the deadfall. You can see like at the bottom of the picture or on the picture on the right, and I'll trim that out and utilize that. Now, that might require you guys to decide that it's time for a road trip, especially the folks that live back east need to go to see Yellowstone National Park, or you might want to see Arches National Park, or go out to California, and on your way through the Rocky Mountain area, you'll find lots and lots of this type of sagebrush around. So if you do that kind of a trip, be sure and take your pruning shears and a plastic bag to throw as much as you can harvest into it. But the reason I use this particular plant for making my trees is it's an extremely durable plant. These sagebrush plants the ones you're looking at here could be anywhere from 50 to 100 years old. And those type of plants are very, very stout and durable. They've I guess, grown to put up with extremely harsh conditions, very, very dry and arid, or when the winters come through, you get high winds and whatnot. So these plants are extremely durable. They have excellent armatures to use to make your trees. Not only that is that the tree trunks look very realistic, as well as any branches. The texture of the bark and the color is excellent. Now, here is a sample of western sagebrush that I actually harvested. This piece on the left is about a 5-inch tall piece of sagebrush, and you can see all the different armatures that are all over the place. Now, being 5 inches may be too big for the use or utility that you want to use it for. So you can actually go in and trim smaller pieces out of it, like you can see over here on the right. I've taken this branch here and I'm trimming it out to end up with a piece that's about 2 inches tall, maybe about a 25 foot tall tree. Here is the tree right there next to one of my box cars. Once you get that, you might need to trim it up just a little bit. Be sure to save all your little pieces that you trim off of it, because you can use those either on the ground underneath the tree to kind of represent some deadfall off of a tree, or other kinds of ground clutter. Maybe put them in a stream that you've got where they kind of stack up against the bridge abutment. So here are several pieces that I was actually able to cut. You can see one looks different. Now, you look, this is a little closer look, especially the one picture on the right. You can see that the trunk of this particular tree has a very, very realistic look compared to a real tree. One of the things that I've come across in using this as a source of trees is that depending on what part of the plant you actually harvest a branch off of, the sides of the plant tend to grow up in one direction. So you might get somewhat of a lopsided branch. Well, if you have that issue, you take another one with a lopsided branch, turn it around, and you can see you can put it together and you get what looks like a fuller tree. Then I will take one of those pieces and I'll trim off near the base of the tree. Do it on a bias, and this gives you a pretty large area that you can actually come in. I've got it glued here, and I'm going to attach it to this one up right about in this area here. Yeah, I can't see it because of. So once I've done that, I just put them together. Use a good wood glue, clamp it together, and for 24 hours, you've got a more full tree that you can actually utilize. And they hang together very, very well. They're absorbent enough that they really soak in the glue, and I haven't had any problem with them breaking apart. Now the next step is, once I've got my tree with the armatures that I want, I spray on a spray adhesive around the top. You don't want to get around the base if you can help it. It'll get all over your tool, but and it'll also cause you a little problem getting some of the greener on the trunk that you don't want. That can be cleaned up at a later point anyway. Then I'll take the sprayed tree and dip it in to, in this case, a dark green underbrush. Then I follow that with a light spraying again, and then I'll dip it into, say, the medium green underbrush. And then lastly, I sprinkle on just a little bit of the super leaf, maybe after another gentle spray adhesive, spray across the plant. And once I've done that, you don't want to just absolutely cover it in the stuff, but a little bit will provide a good look of leaves on your tree. I clean off any of the errant greenery that might be down around the base, drill a small hole where I want to plant it in my diorama, and glue it in with a good white glue, and I'm done. Well, why did I do it that way? The dark green base with the lighter green overlay, to me, provides a really good sense of shaded leaves underneath, and then the outside leaves being a lighter green, being in the sunlight. And the super leaf will add a little bit more of a leafy texture to the overall look. Now, again, you don't have to worry about covering all the branches because you do that. And then I always like to include a few dead trees in my diorama. So here's an example of one of our T-TRAK modules where I've got two of the trees. You can see there's a little bit of difference between the two, and that might represent two different types of trees out in this particular diorama. Now here's another diorama we have, and you can see where I've got some dead tree. I got a dead tree laying on the ground over here and over here that might have fallen out of this tree, and then a dead tree that hadn't fallen over yet over here on the far right side. And that is pretty much it for my presentation. And we can go back to the general screen. If anybody's got any questions, I'd be happy to address them.
All right, we're going to hold the questions till the end of the presentations. We have one more topic to do, and that will be John Doehring. Now, John is on, he's an advisor to the NRail board, and he said he's kind of crazy about trains, the history of trains, and all things model railroading. He models primarily in N-scale, and he's interested in the transition era operations of the Eastern Anthracite coal country in Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and New York. He's an active volunteer in the NRail, currently president of the Northeastern region, and he's also a member of NTRAK and the OPSIG group. So, John, share some of your knowledge with us, please, on what your experience has been with NTRAK module construction.
Okay, can you hear me all right, Steve?
You hear you fine.
And see the one screen?
Now we got it.
All right, one fair warning here. I thought I had 30 minutes, and it looks like there's only about 20 or so till the top of the hour. So I'm going to rifle through things here. And
that's not necessary. Take your 30 minutes, John.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you for having me, and hello to everybody. I see a lot of familiar faces on the screen, so that's cool. This is take 2, module building, lessons learned, and some new ideas for the second time around. So what I want to do, as Steve has suggested, is just share with you a little bit of the journey that I've been on as I built my very first modules. That's going back a few years now, and what I learned through that process and how I'm implementing some of that in building a second set of modules. Now, I know a lot of you on the line today are experienced modelers or have been around modular model railroading for a long time. And so this clinic is really targeted toward those who haven't built very much or have gone kind of slow and are looking for some inspiration to kind of accelerate a little bit. But all of you old hands out there, make sure you put some questions and some comments and share some of your experiences in the chat as we go along. Now, as Steve suggested, I am sort of crazy about everything that has to do with trains and model railroading and history. And I bet you are too, and that's why you're here today in part on a Saturday afternoon. But there's something I think that's really, really strange about our hobby, and that is that we can be really into railroading. For me, that started when I was 5 or 6 years old, growing up on the Texas Gulf Coast, where there were trains everywhere, Southern Pacific and Cotton Belt and Katy freights, the petrochemical industry, the agricultural industry. I saw trains everywhere, and I was just totally in love with them. And by the time I was 12, I had my first train set and a layout, a 4x8 plywood Pacific, and when I was 12, I met and found out there was such a thing as an adult model railroader, somebody who was serious about it, something called the NRail, the idea that you could even become a master model railroader. That was a long time ago. So this has been a part of my identity for a long time. But, I have to make this confession with you that I've been a model railroader forever. This slide says for 40 years, really close to 50 years now, but I didn't have a lot to show for it other than a big, big stack of magazines. Think all the way back to 1972, the Nixon era, the Munich Olympics, not the end of the space shuttle program, but the beginning of it. And back when the Dow was only 1,500, that was a long time ago. So how is it that you can have an identity and a hobby and be really into it and yet not have much to show for it? I think that's a bit strange. So I started reflecting on why is that? Well, part of it is that I am a dreamer. I suffer from this sort of armchair railroader syndrome that you know, I thought about it forever and ever without doing. And I only partially apologize for that, because I also can say that I have a lot of enjoyment over the years just thinking about it, planning and designing layouts and building them in my head, learning, doing research. And so that isn't all bad, but as I got to be close to 50 years old, I started thinking, well, you know, I need to do something other than just think about this. So what comes next? There are some obstacles, and here are some of them. Obstacles to getting going, to doing things in the hobby. Inexperience, just not knowing how to do something. There's real investment in time and money and effort. There's all the distractions and priorities of life. There's our sense that we don't want to get started until we know how to do it right. So there's sort of the perfection kind of gets in the way of making progress, and fear and just fear. And I thought to myself, how can that even be possible? Why would I talk about fear in the context of a hobby, which is supposed to be fun and sort of enjoyable and something different than the anxiety of life? And of course, Mr. Roosevelt suggested to us almost 100 years ago now that the only thing that we have to fear is what? Is fear itself, right? Well, that makes a lot of sense. But then I said, well, Franklin, there's a couple other things I fear about, especially in this hobby. It's about doing it wrong, doing it over, wasting lots of money, and looking like a fool. How about those as potential fears for getting started? Doing it wrong, doing it over, wasting money, looking like a fool. So as I said, what changed for me as I approached 50 was age. You know, just kind of the realization that if I didn't get going and start building something, I wasn't ever going to get there. So that motivated me in a different way. That helped to kind of crystallize my vision. That pushed me to get involved, and getting involved was an important piece of this. My friend Ian Kemp at the local train store says, your second project won't be 10% better, it'll be 1,000% better. Your second project won't be 10% better, just a little better, it'll be completely better. His point was, there's no reason to not just go, not just do, because you're not going to get it right. You're going to learn a lot along the way. And you're not, whatever it is you start with is not what you end with. So that's just a sort of a motivation to get going. As long ago as about 6 years ago, as I was thinking of this, you know, I wrote this article, Confessions of a Reforming Armchair Railroader, which was published in N-Scale magazine. And I talked mostly in that session about how getting involved in NTRaK, in Northeast NTRaK, in the NMRA and other groups and stuff really helped to get me going. Now, action is a relative term. There are some of you on the line here who are really outstanding modelers. There are some of you who are super fast modelers. I'm not either one of those. So it's a relative term. I wasn't doing anything. Now I'm building modules kind of at the pace of every few years. That's not terribly fast, but for me and for everything else that's going on in my life, it is taking action. So here's some stuff about my first module. I asked you to be kind. Remember, this is my first. So here is my timetable. And it took a long, long time, as you can see, all the way back to the Big Bang. In about 2000, I was designing this first module set for NTRaK. I cut the lumber for that pretty quickly. And then life happened to me, as it happens to all of us. I had a career change and a new job, and we moved, and I got married, and I had a couple kids. And so for several years, nothing happened. Fast forward to around 2008 and 9, I started putting it all together, laying the track, doing the scenery, and that still took me a few years. But I had this thing operational around 2010. This is what it looked like. It's a 12-foot NTRaK module. This is actually just a picture of me at the very first show that I took it to. If you look closely, you would see there's a lot of stuff here that isn't complete. It's only about 50% done, but it was running. And I show this picture for one reason. That is to show that the module owner, me, has a smile on his face, because I learned kind of this thing that wasn't always obvious, but and you'll laugh to hear it. But it turns out that when you're in a modular club, having a module makes it fun. I had been coming to NTRaK meetings for 3 or 4 years without a module, helping other people set up. It was just a whole different thing, a game changer. I'll show more on this in a minute. So I found my local tribe with NTRaK, with Northeast NTRaK up here in the New England states. I did not, hear this really important thing. I did not join NTRaK because I thought I needed a lot of friends. That was, you know, I'm a kind of a shy person. It did not occur to me that what I needed was friends. What I needed was to learn how to do stuff. I wanted to get on the other side of the modules, kind of get on the inside, look underneath them. I needed people to help me figure out what to do. And I did find that at NTRaK. It's a great organization for how to, right? All of the information and the books and the resources and the newsletter. And all of that was really, really super. I mean, the whole time I built my first modules, I had that how-to book open page by page, just kind of following it along like it was a recipe. That was phenomenal. And still today, when I can't remember something, I just Google that, bring up that PDF, and it's right there at your fingertips. So I was successful in getting a lot of learning from NTRaK, but I also found along the way that I did make a lot of friends, that I did join a community, that it is kind of a tribe for me. Here's just some pictures from our Winterfest celebration. Some of you will know that quite well. That is the annual in-scale convention that happens at the Amherst Railway Show in Springfield every January. Not this one, but just about every January. Just kind of this whole idea of joining a group, being in community, all coming together from all of the New England and Northeast states, Eastern Canada, and building huge in-scale layouts. There's nothing quite like it. So here are my 7 lessons learned in building that first module set. Number 1, size matters. Size matters a lot. So let me tell you the story there. This was a 12-foot module, and this picture's not very good, but it shows kind of it broken into the 2 6-foot kind of sections. I have some photos, so that'll be a little bit more useful. But I want to make 2 points about what I had in mind when I built this first NTRaK module set, which is in 3 pieces, 12 feet long straight. The idea number 1 was I want it to be an encapsulated scene. So I need a scene break on each end because I didn't like the way that sometimes modules came together when they didn't match aesthetically. So I thought, you know what, I'll put something on each end. So you can't really see it, but kind of in the upper right there, there's sort of a mountain, and there's tracks that come across nearly perpendicular to the main line. So that was sort of a scene break on that side. And then on the lower left, sort of the same thing at the other end of the module. There's kind of a little mountain there. There's a big fat river, and that forms sort of the edge there. So that was idea or layout design element number 1, that it would be kind of a self-contained scene. The other idea I had was I didn't really like the look at the time of the 3-track NTRaK standard. You know, so NTRaK is really good as a vehicle for showing off trains, particularly really long trains, to the public. But it didn't look very prototypical to me to have those 3 tracks in a row. So I wanted to see if I could figure out a way to separate, at least in the middle of the module, separate that. And so that's one of the things. That's probably the second idea, was to diverge the blue line a little bit so that they didn't all sort of stay parallel. Those were my 2 ideas. Here's just a picture of that. By the way, so I thought very briefly about building a 4-foot module, but not very long at all. Then for the longest time, I was building an 8-foot straight. And then as I started building it, I realized it had to be 12. There just couldn't be any dumber thinking than that. Your very first module would be 12 feet long. And so that's why size matters a lot. Here's that kind of mountain coming together on the right-hand side, and that will and here's a little bit of the divergence in the track in the middle, and then the big river and the mountain kind of thing on the other side. And if you look down the length of it, you can see maybe a little bit how those parallel tracks would sort of diverge a little. Here's what it looks like in my basement right now, taking pictures of it for this for this clinic originally. You get a little sense of that. You don't get a sense of how big this thing is filling up my basement, and the look on my wife's face when she says, "Is this going to be here a long time?" It's actually a pretty big, bulky sort of thing at 12 feet long. Here's some pictures of the layout. It kind of in its current state, I would say it's sort of maybe now 70 or 80% scenic. Here's that mountain scene kind of on the right, like a little flyover. The couple of trains working in the interior, this little town I call Britzerville. If you look close, you can see that some of those buildings don't have the windows in them yet. There's still so much stuff to do. Here's that river scene on the left. It's sort of a big wide river. Here's a train coming over those bridges. Always attracts lots of kids. It's kind of right at eye level for little kids. It's pretty cool. But here's the problem with link, and it is complexity. Note that I say at the bottom, no science was employed or harmed in the creation of this hypothesis. This is just my feeling, but complexity is going up way faster than the length of the module, even faster than area, kind of like length squared. That's what I thought. So what am I saying there is that building an 8-foot module is sort of 4 times as complex and difficult as building just a 4-footer, and building one that's 12-foot was 9 or 10 times as complex. And it's just because obviously there is more area, more geography, more depth, but just the chance, you just have all the time when you're building this chance of adding more stuff to it. So the bigger you have, the more complex it gets. There is another problem with length, and that comes in flexibility. Here is this is just a picture of the layout. It was the first time I was a layout coordinator. It's just an example of what happened. And you can kind of see on the upper tier here, there is a 4-module set that is our community yard. And there's my 12-foot set right next to it. Then on the bottom, there's another 12-foot module and a 10-foot module. Now, the good thing about really large, long modules like that is they make the layout really big, really quick. That's good for the coordinator. But they're now bigger pieces, and they're hard to move around at the last minute in particular. What happened on my very first time was the module that's red in the lower piece, and then the module that's pink right next to it. Well, it turns out that both of those modules had both animation and sound. One was a circus module, one is a Disney module, and those songs clashed for 8 hours that day. And I probably could have figured that out if I knew more about what I was doing. But just my point is kind of, there's not very flexible when everybody brings a really big long one. Here's what obviously what a plain old 4-footer would look like, a POFF, right? 4 feet by 2 feet, 3 tracks. And my attitude today is, and I really do wish somebody had said to me in the beginning, if you can't start with just that, then you can't be in the club. If you can't build a plain old 4-footer, then you're fired. So I want to encourage everyone to be thinking about that. Start small. Start small. Build just a single module. Build a diorama. Build a shelf layout. Something small. All right. Number 2, a little flatter is a whole lot gooder. A little flatter module is a whole lot gooder because peaks and valleys make your life story rich, but they make your module bulky. So remember, here I got a big mountain kind of here on the right. That turned out to be, moving that thing around all the time is quite challenging. Same thing on this side, sort of the up and down mountain and valley. That one is a deep one. And if you're going to have vertical relief, then I've got on the left side, I've got a river that's about 18 or 20 inches wide. On the right side, I got a little creek kind of action. If you're going to do something, maybe go skinny over fatter that way. I'm a little conflicted about that because, as I said, that big fat wide river that I have is a scene kind of stealer, and people do enjoy watching the trains going over all those bridges. Number 3, avoid the weight of the world. So bulkiness is one thing, so is weight. Remember Toby Keith, the country singer, said once that we're not as good as we once were. I feel that all the time dragging these modules around. I'm not as good as I once was. These things seem to be getting heavier all the time. So here's another non-scientific hypothesis that I've kind of suggested over the years. What this says is that there is a inverse correlation between your age and the weight of your module. So if you're 20 years old, you can lug around a 40-pound module, or if you're 30 years old, maybe a 30-pound module. But by the time you get to be 40 or 50, you start thinking, man, that thing weighs a little bit. I wonder if I could make this a little bit less. And by the time you get to be my age at 60, you're thinking, the next time I build one of these, I'm going to build it like I'm a backpacker and cut off all the labels, right? Everything matters. And then finally, here's my punchline. I think by the time you get to be 70, your module shouldn't weigh anything, which is another way of saying for all of us who are 70 or more, somebody else ought to carry your modules into the show for you. How about that as an idea? That ought to be a rule, right? What did I do? Well, I did do a couple things to reduce weight. I built these modules out of dimensional lumber, and because I had a little portable planer at home, I planed down all the wood, so it's really about half the thickness that it comes from the store in. That helped a little bit. You can see I drilled some holes, mostly for wires, but that takes a little bit of weight off. I did that on the module sort of legs here, drilled that out. But that doesn't, all of this isn't saving much weight, because look what I did that made it too heavy. Some of you may recognize this. I just stacked up all the foam and then slathered, I love this word, slather. I just slathered Sculptamold all over it, because I thought that's the way that you built scenery. And that might be fine at home, but by the time I got through all this, I realized, I've got somewhere between a half a gallon and a gallon of Sculptamold on these modules too. And you wouldn't want to carry that around with you going into the show. It would be much, much better to carve the foam and make it, almost finished, and then put a really thin top coat of Sculptamold. So that was a lesson that I learned there. The other thing is, I've mentioned a couple times this big fat river. It takes about 18 inches by 18 inches. It's Envirotex. It's probably 3/4 to an inch thick. So imagine the weight of a slab of plastic glass like that. It's pretty darn heavy. And in my second round, I would like to kind of think about that a little bit more explicitly first. Okay, number 4. Stick with me here. We're moving to the finish line. Number 4, make the track part perfect. That seems like a duh. And here I think I did pretty well. My track works pretty well, but it's a good reminder that a beautifully scenic module that does everything right in aesthetics, but then has community tracks on it, the ones that we all share, that don't work well, is going to be a bust. It's going to be a module that nobody wants to play with. It's going to make it a lot less fun for everyone. So making the track part perfect is worth just about all the time and effort that you can put into it. I made 2 mistakes, and it's funny because I never knew why, and I finally figured it out today. On each end of my module, my tracks end just a little bit too short. It wasn't noticeable at the first, but my tracks are somewhere between a 1/16 of an inch and an 1/8 of an inch too short. And it drives you crazy in the show because, the little joiner tracks are kind of in standard sizes, and it's just a little bit too much, right? So I'm constantly cutting flex track if I can't find the ones that I made last time. And I just realized, I'm driving down the road today, and I said, I know what happened. I glued that track all the way to the end of the module and then cut it with a saw, and I didn't think about the thickness of the saw. I think that's probably what happened. So that's an important thing. Measure, so that on those endpoints you're able to make these things join without any customization each time. Half the time, it's not even you putting those joiner tracks in, but your neighbor, and they're even more pissed off having to fix your module. The other thing that I made a mistake is my interior. Remember, this thing's in 3 parts, so I've got 2 interior joints, and I could have butt jointed those, and probably should have. This is the least favorite part of NTRaK to me, is putting these joiner tracks in at the show. I can't believe that we could put a man on the moon, but we can't fix this problem. So you can see I'm working on to fix that now. And of course, all the siding tracks, they don't need to be anything but butt jointed. So that's really how I think about it today. And that would just reduce by half all the joiner tracks that I have to put in. Okay, number 5, pack it up, don't glue it down. Here's my lesson learned. If it can fall off and break, if it can bend, drop, flop, plop, crash, smash, dash, shatter, splatter, or otherwise cause itself to become partially or completely ruined, it will, especially if it's expensive. Here's what happened to me on my very, very, very first show ever. I took that inside module, the middle module out, carried it outside, realized I didn't have the car keys, set it down on its end so that it was upright. Now that's not a problem because it was a beautiful, crisp winter day, no wind or no breeze or anything. I went back in the house, I got the keys, I came back out, and of course the module had blown over, the one little breeze that day. And of course it fell pepperoni side down. you know, and it had about 50 handmade trees on it. So what I have today is something that looks more like a clear-cut forest there. So everything that's on a module that can break, breaks. My friend Shaq Hiralembu says this way: a module is a model train layout that goes for a car ride. And I just laugh every time I think about that, because we don't often think about it that way. You're building this thing. This is not like your home layout in the basement or the bonus room or right above the garage. This is taking your layout and taking it for a car ride, and nothing good happens when you do that, right? So for me today, everything comes off, everything that can. So I don't glue down any of the buildings or any of those kind of things. Only really, really small pieces. I pack it all up in these boxes. I know a lot of you guys do this as well, and because I learned it from others like you. If there's small buildings, I might put them all on, glue them all onto a piece of styrene, like I'm playing around with on this one. And I would advise you to buy, if you're going to go this route, buy some stock and Sterlite or Rubbermaid, because you end up with tons and tons of these tubs. But for me, I found that to be a much, much better way to protect things and also to make sure they don't walk off. Number 6, nothing beats a great pair of legs. Legs is kind of a really interesting part of building a module, because there's so many design considerations that we can so many different things you can do, right? Some module legs are just rough cut 2x4, some are nicely milled wood, some are made out of PVC pipe, some are made out of metal tubing of various different kinds, and they have all kinds of fixtures on them and attachments and things that are 3D printed. There's all kind of stuff going on today. It's very interesting. Some pop in, some are fold up. And so I wanted to do something that was much better than my first generation, which I think what I did, I just took 2x4s and cut them into sort of 2x2s. And they go in the normal way that they do in the original NTRaK book with T-nuts. And to me, look, half the shows I've gone to, my electric screwdriver is dead. Half the time I couldn't find the 7/16 wrench. You know, this whole thing is just driving me crazy, because I'm watching people who come with fold up legs and then, you know, they're up in 10 seconds, or people that had pockets in that. So I really wanted to do something different in my second time around, because I spent so much time, and I know a bunch of you have too, you know, kind of you're down on your hands and knees. You're trying to turn that nut that's upside down, right? There's somebody's yelling at you, no, clockwise. Yeah, well, clockwise is counterclockwise when it's upside down, and it's stuck in the floor and all that kind of stuff. That's another not so fun part of it for me. Here's what my new modules look like. Just, you know, I made simple leg pockets, throw the leg in there, give it a couple of turns. It only has to hold on to it until you get it standing up. It's going to be clamped together, so it doesn't have to be super strong, just help you stand up. Number 7, lone wolves are all alone, and they're often lonely. I like to say it more emphatically today. If you're doing model railroading by yourself, you're doing it wrong. If you're doing model railroading by yourself today, you're doing it wrong. And I can say that emphatically because I did it all by myself forever. Again, it wasn't intuitive to me for a long period of time that it was a social hobby. In fact, I didn't want it to be a social hobby, right? Isn't the point? Some of us think the point is to kind of escape the world, go into the basement, do our own thing by ourselves. But I learned, as many of you had, the power of making friendships, joining a community, learning from one another, teaching one another. And in a really strange way, this year has been an opportunity to do that I didn't have in the past. You know, it's strange, right? We're all kind of disconnected from one another, but because of that, we have a lot of new ways, at least new for me, in addition to things like the NMRX, and we just finished the NER, the Northeastern Region virtual convention last week. It was really, really cool. We had 16 clinics, and we also had 12 recorded layout tours. You need to look for those on the YouTube channel. You can go to the NMRA YouTube channel, type in NERX, and you'll get all those, and they're all either indexed now or they're about to be, so you can figure out what's what. Really, really cool. Those videos were really, really nice. This year, I've listened to a bunch of podcasts. Here's 3 of them on here. I found many Facebook groups. YouTube is a kind of a wild west of model railroading stuff, uncurated, you know, tons and tons of stuff, hard to figure it out. Things like ZOOMTrak, just all kinds of opportunities, more than you can even deal with, to connect with your gang, with your tribe. Ask for help and help others. Don't find yourself out here on the ledge all by yourself. This is a hobby that you can get help from other people. Here's the picture I always show as an example of that. You'll know that, many of you will know, right, that the bus wire for NTRaK is 12 gauge wire. That's pretty robust. That cost a lot of money. I went and bought one of those at Home Depot. I think it was about, I want to say I spent about 75 bucks on it or something. It might have been a 100-foot roll of this. The piece on the right is the piece that I ripped out of those modules after I realized that I had, of course, bought and used the wrong kind. This is a solid core 12 gauge bus wire, and bus wire can't be a solid core. It won't work very well. I only knew that after I spent the money and put it on, right? Solid core for the feeders, not for the bus itself. But just an example of, you know what, maybe I should have asked one more question. Maybe I should have said to somebody, I don't know much about wiring, because there's all kinds of people that can help. Here's my achievement certificate for volunteer. I show that just as an example because, you know, you've heard this story before in your life, but when you volunteer and you help others, you're the one that really gets the payoff. It's just been an extraordinary experience for me to get involved with the NRail, with NTRaK, to kind of volunteer a little bit. I can't help much, but I'm a pair of hands at times, right? But I've gotten so much out of that. For 6 years now, I've been the president of the Northeastern region. Sometimes that's what I do instead of building my modules. That goes into the bucket of hobby time, right? But that's okay, because again, I get a lot out of it, and it helps me keep me connected with this group. All right, a couple things real quick on the new modules. I'm still fragile here. I'm still learning, right? So here was my givens and druthers. Here's what I wanted to do in this new module set. I was looking for something more flexible in length, not 12 feet. It has to all go in one line together. I wanted them to be interchangeable. I couldn't do that with my first set, so it'd be nice to be able to move them around, to put them in different places. I wanted it to be super lightweight and completely flat, or at least less bulky. I wanted the scenery to be very durable, and I want it to be easy to set up. Here's what the picture of that looks like. So my new set, what I call the Take 2 modules, includes a 4-foot regular straight, the plain old 4-footer, then a 3-foot corner, and then an 8-foot straight, which comes in 2 parts. And the reason why I did it this way, and by the way, the design of the scenery is to kind of make it look very similar across that whole set of modules, and yet make it so that you could move them all around and they would still match up well. It's kind of a puzzle to do that, but that's the idea. The reason why I built it this way is now when the layout coordinator calls for modules, I can offer all these different options. I can bring a 3-foot, a 4-foot, a 7-foot, an 8-foot, an 11, a 12, or a 15, depending upon what they need and in what order. So I've got a lot of flexibility there. Management guru Peter Drucker once said that even most grandiose strategies must eventually degenerate into work. So I've got an idea, but I got to do something with it. So here I am building a while back, building the plain old 4-footer and the 3-foot standard corner. You can see I'm gluing cork down on in this set of pictures. Here's what it looks like right now at the moment. The track is down and weathered. On these 2 modules, I built about 15 of these Walthers or DPM kits. You can see they're kind of part of the reason why they're in an angle the way they are is because that's how I'm making it so that that you can feel the scenery flowing across the different modules, no matter what direction they're in. So that's kind of in another month or so. This is mostly all flat, so it's just industrial, asphalt, and concrete. So I think I'll be in really good shape and have these just about running in another month. Other things that I'm interested in, I'm looking to build a T-TRAK layout. This is what the plan for that kind of looks like. I think tabletop, not just T-TRAK, but I think tabletop modular railroading is going to be huge, primarily because we're not as good as we once were, because we don't all drive minivans anymore, because super portability is really going to matter, and as is ease of construction. I know a lot of you are T-TRAKers. I've only played around with it a little bit, so I'm going to have a shot at this as well. Here's another thing I'm working on. This is about a 25-foot long Fremo N-scale module plan. This is designed specifically to help me achieve 2 certificates in the NRail Achievement Program, Civil Engineering and Electrical Engineering. It's kind of a representative of an engine terminal facility. So I'm playing around with that. Last time I gave this clinic, somebody said, why are you doing all those things together? None of them match up with one another. And I said, well, my short answer is because I have a super high case of ADHD and I don't know how to say no to anything. But the more nuanced answer is because each of these modular standards, you know, kind of gets you something else, right? What I love about NTRaK is being together with a group, showing off for the community, running really long trains, letting the kids get super excited. What I like about Fremo N is, you know, is that it challenges a really high sort of ethical standard on the modeling, on the prototype, and you know, the opportunity to do operations. All right, so let me just skip a couple of these because we want to wrap up here. So one thing I learned, and I know many of you know as well, right? Model railroading is a process, and you don't want to miss that process. That's part of the fun of learning and experiencing the hobby. So you're going to make mistakes, but that's a part of it. I like this notion here that good judgment comes from experience, and experience comes from bad judgment, right? So just think back to my wire that I had to rip out and start all over again. You know, part of this is just how you get there, right? Do it. So here's a recap. Number 1, always start small. Don't build something too big. Start small because your second one will be not 10% better, but 1,000% better. Number 2, be careful about sort of bulkiness, and especially for modular layouts, make sure they're flat or less bulky at least. As light a weight as possible is number 3. Number 4, the community track needs to be just run flawlessly and be perfect. Number 5, it's better, I think, to pack up the pieces that are easy to set out on the module rather than try to glue them down and expect them to last. Number 6, put some effort into making the legs easy and quick and fast. And number 7, do this with others. Don't try to be just a lone wolf modeler because you're sort of afraid to jump out there. So I always say to everyone, what are you going to be, an armchair railroader like me or a rail baron like these guys, Gold, Harriman, Vanderbilt, Morgan, Carnegie? Build something that lasts, that has some legacy. And then finally, Yogi Berra says, when you come to a fork in the road, take it, you know, which is the right way. It doesn't matter. Do the best job you can analyzing, but don't spend too much time there. It's better to move than it is to simply think. I show this one all the time. Somebody said, what are you going to do with all these modules? I said, well, I'm going to go all these shows. I'm going to drag them around. I'm going to need some way to carry them back and forth through the shows in style. So this is part of my latest dream. And here's my sort of my motto or my mission. We come together through our shared love for trains, and we stay together through our shared love for one another. I appreciate the time. I'm sorry I've gone over a little bit. Enjoyed the other clinics, and happy to talk to anyone now or later offline. Here's my contact information, john@jdoehring.com. It's john@jdoehring.com. Love to talk to you soon. Steve?
All right, if you'll release your screen sharing, then we'll move on to the final thing. Well, guys, we've been on for about an hour and 20 minutes. Those of you who want to stay on, we'll go through these chat questions if we have any. If you need to move on to other things, I can understand that too. Chat thing, we've got a lot of comments. I don't see that most of these are sharing information.
Yeah.
What they have. I'm looking for questions. Does anybody have a question that they, while I'm scanning through these, that they'd like to ask? If so, you can just hit the mute button and it will unmute you. I think, won't it, Bruce?
I have a question for Chuck. And that is, do you treat the wood pieces at all before you build a tree out of them?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, we
Okay.
can. You treat them really
no,
nicely.
I really have not. I mean, these pieces of sage that I'm getting have been sitting out in the middle of these arid deserts for who knows how long, years. But the ones that I built and put onto my layout are not deteriorating whatsoever. I wouldn't necessarily discourage that if you would want to treat it in something. It might tend to change the coloration of it a little bit. But I, like I say, I haven't found a real need to.
Well, not being familiar with sagebrush, is it does it break easily, or is it a little bit resilient?
Well, that was the one thing I did really notice about this stuff is it's a very hardy, tough, resilient plant. It doesn't, it's not very brittle. There are little tips on the end that might be brittle, but for the most part, the things that I showed you are fairly tough, and I can't say that they would withstand having it blow over onto its pepperoni side like the other gentleman mentioned, but I think they do stand up pretty well.
All right. Thanks, Chuck.
All right.
I got a question.
Go ahead.
Yeah, pertaining to the signs, what software were you using to make them? I have Word.
Yeah. I use Word and Publisher.
Word and Publisher, I have them both. How do you figure the scale of what size your sign is going to be?
When you draw a rectangle, you can get an actual size. So basically, you figure how big, you have to find out how big the sign is going to be somewhere. In the case of parking signs, you can go ahead and look that up on the internet or approximate the size. It'll be on a building or actually measure, for example, if it's a Walters building, measure how if you want half the width of the building, just measure it out. Then when you go ahead and you draw the rectangle, just make it that size. And a lot of it is playing around in trial and error. I basically print something, then I'll hold it up to the building and say, no, it's too big. I have to go back, make it half the size, print it out again. So there's a lot of redoing until you find something that you really liked. But all you're really doing is printing another sheet of paper when you get to the point where you're starting to measure.
If you use Microsoft Word as your medium, when you import your drawing, Word will have a scale around it as to what it is in actual inches, and that's the way it'll print out. So if you know how big you want the sign, you can make that thing shrink or expand once you get it into Word. And if that doesn't fit it exactly quite right, all you have to do is when you go to your print option, you can change it to 110% or 98% or whatever you want to shrink it or expand it proportionally.
Okay, well, I'll give it a try.
Hey, Bruce.
Yeah.
I would make another suggestion. I have used Excel to bring pictures into and build some signs from. And one of the things I would do is I went in and I would color each cell maybe a different color, and then I could print it out and see what each of those cell widths are, just measuring it on the piece of paper, and that might speed up the trial and error on it.
Yeah, there are a couple of different ways of doing it. In Word, you'll actually have, when you draw something, I think Excel probably has the same feature also. Over on the very right side, it'll have the size in inches. So,
there is a problem with Excel. The vertical and horizontal scales are not identical. Excel was built back in the days, it was a conversion from a word processor, and so it uses the printer techniques of M&Ms to decide the column width. And even though it says so many pixels, if you draw a grid of 20 pixels by 20 pixels, when you print them out, it'll be stretched vertically. And you have to adjust that in Excel. That's why I recommend Word rather than Excel for printing these things out. All right, if there are no questions, let me give you just.
John has a question.
I actually just have I have a comment that Bruce's clinic about signs made me think about something else that I've been working on this week. And that is, if you will, a sign on the side of a freight car, a decal. As a part of our NERX, that's Northeastern Region Annual Convention, which was virtual this year, one of the things that we did was we had a virtual convention car. And what that amounted to was somebody took the time to make a sheet of decals that you can print out and the instructions to do that. I don't know if anybody, I'm sure some of you have done that, but some of you maybe never have. So if you're interested in that, go to Mill City 2020. That's Mill, M-I-L-L, Mill City 2020, which was the original NER convention site this year, and look for the clickable that says NERX convention car. And I'm just saying that as an example, because as I went through that and thought about how you do that, and it tells you the details in there about what kind of paper to get from Microscale for the decals and such. It made me realize, wow, decals is not that much of a mystery either. If I've got them printed out with a Word document on a piece of paper, I just put decal paper into my printer, and apparently there's a couple pitfalls you have to avoid there. But there I am. And so actually yesterday or the day before, I actually bought some cars on eBay to try and make these convention cars. So just another sort of riff on the sign thing, Bruce, that, signs, some of the signs roll down the track, right?
Yep.
All right, well, let me give you a little preview of what's coming up next month. Our next meeting is ZOOMTrak meeting is scheduled for January the 16th. And JTC will be our vendor presenter, and they'll talk about their containers. I will be speaking on layout, maintenance, and housekeeping, and that is for home layouts and modules. And Terry Moore will be speaking about beyond the rectangle. I say that, beyond the rectangle. And he'll be applying that to T-TRAK modules and how you can get away from the plain old square or box. And also there will be a special presentation that we'll keep under wraps, and you'll learn about it when you sign on. So we thank you all for attending this month's meeting. Please share the word with others that you may know. Remind them that they have to be a member of NTRAK in order to get the link to sign in for this thing. We'd like to have as many people as we can show up. There's no limit. And so please share the wealth and ask other people to join us, and we'll see you all in about a month on January the 16th. Thank you.
Another question, please.
Go ahead.
Has anybody heard any word pertaining to the Amherst show in Springfield, Mass?
It's virtual.
It's going to be virtual this year.
It's going to be virtual, yes.
Yep.
Okay, where do I find the link for it?
I just do a search on the internet and see if you can, and see what comes up. Model Train Society, I think it is. Faye's no longer on here. He would know, but I just do a search for Amherst.
Amherst.
Go to the Amherst Railroad Society website,
Yep.
and they're going to post a link when the show is going to be on there. So you have to keep track of their website, and they'll post all the information for it.
Yeah. They're going to do, they're actually going to do 4 different, I think, dates quarterly. There's one that's going to happen. The first one's going to happen on the same days that the show would have happened. And they're planning on some others throughout the year. And they've offered for all manufacturers and any vendors and any of us that are, sort of associations or organizations, if we want to make a presentation, that option is there. So that's probably something we should think about, a little promotional clinic on NTRAK and the benefits thereof.
Well, I'm just learning all this, so I've got a lot to learn.
We all do.
All right. Well, thank you very much. One other thing. We have quite a few presentations set up over the next few months, but we have some slots available. So if any of you have something that you would like to share with the rest of us, please contact us through the website, through the NTRaK website, and let us know that you might be interested in making a presentation. And we'll get with you and see if we can make that happen. So again, thanks to everyone, and we'll see you. Is there anything else before we sign this off?
Yeah, Steve, I've got a question. I had some other thing going on here while you were talking about the next meeting. Did you say we're okay to share the link to bring somebody else in as a guest, or how do we do that?
Technically, we'll have to shoot you if you do that. No,
that's what I was
thinking. To go to the website and join NTRaK.
Yeah, sign them up for NTRaK.
On the homepage is link. Bruce, go ahead.
I was just going to say, sign them up for NTRaK. It's just $10 a year.
Yeah, we'll give them a Christmas.
There you go. Right.
Sounds like a plan.
Christmas gift.
Yep.
I have one parting comment. I have one parting shot, Steve.
Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Just want to remind everybody that the 15th of this month is the deadline for our wonderfully edited, world-famous newsletter. Thank you.
All right. Yes, our newsletters are since Steve's taken this over, the newsletter is just fantastic looking. We've gotten larger. We're 50 to 60 pages long, and it's very, very nice production. And he's done a great job on that for us. All right. Any last comments or questions? And we're going to sign this off. Okay. Thank you all very much. We'll see you after the first of the year. Have a good night.